The goal of investing in retirement isn't to beat the market. It's basically to fund your lifestyle, right? That you're looking to live. Most of the folks we meet are investing, their entire lives for accumulation. But retirement requires a shift to intention. The portfolio's job changes over time. And if your strategies don't change with it, risk quietly increases, which can put your income plan in jeopardy.
If you don't tell your money what its job is, the markets are going to decide for you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Retire Stronger, episode 42. I am sitting here today with my co-host, Bill Kearney. Bill, say hello to everyone.
Hey, John. Hello, everyone. Good to be here.
Welcome back. Yeah, welcome back. It's good to be back on here with you again. And I know that today we're kind of diving into basically a part 3 of planning for a new year. So 2026 planning, part 3. I know we've talked about a couple of other important topics, but I would tell you that, I don't know about you, Bill, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I would say that a lot of our clients, they want to focus on this piece of the puzzle probably more often than any other topic we discuss, other than maybe taxes. They are obviously very keen and very aware of the investments piece that goes into their retirement planning and planning for a successful year to come, especially when it comes to their income. So that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. And I would tell you that, what we want to kind of share, the idea behind investment, the investment plan is, the goal of investing, in retirement, isn't to beat the market. It's basically to fund, your lifestyle, right? That you're looking to live. And that's the goal. We're not trying to beat the markets, folks. And, most of the folks we meet, if not almost every single one of them, are investing, their entire lives for accumulation. But, honestly, retirement requires a shift to intention, a change, so to speak, with the structure and the coordination of your investments. So basically what I'm trying to say here, folks, is the portfolio's job changes over time. And, if your strategies don't change with it, risk quietly increases or can quietly increase, which can put your income plan in your retirement years in jeopardy. And I know that that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about various topics within this whole idea of investing. And I know, Bill, you kind of wanted to kick us off with, purpose-based investing, right? And kind of talking through some of that information. So I'll kick it over to you and let you get going here.
Yeah, thanks, John. For sure, everything you said is correct. It's interesting because a lot of folks do not think through, at least it seems, that shift, that subtle shift that happens when the paycheck is turned off from your employer and needs to be turned on from your investments. That Correct. Shift requires a shift in how the money is viewed, how it's purposed, what you want it to do, and what you're going to need in the future. And we call that, purpose-based investing. And coupled with purpose-based investing, kind of a visual way to picture this is using a bucketed approach of what we call now, soon, and later money.
Yep.
And if you could take all of your assets and pile them on the table, and you had 3 buckets in front of you, and you had labeled all of them now, soon, and later, what you would be doing is picking up portions of that pile of money and putting them into each bucket. And each bucket is going to be invested differently with a different purpose. The now bucket is going to be your bucket that you need immediately or could need immediately. Maybe that's your 6-month reserve bucket. It's the money that you always have access to at a moment's notice. Ideally, that's going to be 6 months of living expenses. Okay. The soon bucket is money you may need in the next 5 to 8 years, somewhere in that area. That money is going to be invested differently than the money in the now bucket. And then the later bucket, that's the 10 years and beyond money. And those funds are going to be invested differently, maybe with a different risk structure than the other 2 preceding buckets. So purpose purposing your money in those areas is a critical component in that shift. And we think that the bucket approach actually helps you visualize where your money is, what it's doing, and what is going to be available at certain times in the future. The point here is very clear. If you don't tell your money what its job is, the markets are going to decide for you. If you put everything in the soon bucket or everything in the later bucket and you are investing for accumulation in retirement, well, that might be a different risk structure. And if the market turns, the market's going to determine what that bucket actually looks like, not you. That's why we want to have a purpose-minded investment strategy when we hit retirement. So kind of a 10,000 foot view on the purpose-based investing there, John, but I think that will tie you into the risk alignment that you wanted to talk about related to all of this. Talk about risk as it's associated with the bucket type strategy.
Yeah, I mean, and let's just talk about that third bucket, that longer term bucket where we're talking about growth here. That growth bucket's going to have a different structure. As you mentioned, it's going to have a different potential risk tolerance that's going to be involved with those assets and how they're invested. And I think I want to make it very clear, and I think it's very important to bring up the fact that having a growth mindset, it does not equal speculation. We're not talking about speculating with your money here. So again, growth does not equal speculation. It's planned patience and a proper structure, proper risk tolerance to make sure that your investments are aligned and are going to grow for the future. So I just wanted to be very, very clear about that.
Exactly right.
And there's all kinds of other areas we can discuss about those buckets, and we can dive pretty deep and go deep into those different buckets. But I just wanted to make sure that I made that very clear. And I think you did a great job of explaining why you would want to have those buckets. And I think more often than not, we find clients that they adhere to that one bucket approach. And it's typically that growth bucket, that long-term bucket. They don't really visualize, or they've never had someone, say, hey, we need to section these sources of income in these funds off so that you are not having to dip into a long-term bucket if there's a downturn in the market, or you're or to make sure you have a bucket of money to fund your immediate lifestyle right now, so we're not having to sell off assets in an inopportune time. And so I think that's what we're talking about here, about risk alignment, and understanding the risks that actually matter, right? Your portfolio, it doesn't fail when markets drop. It fails when emotions take over. I can't tell you how many times we've gotten the phone call over the years. I mean, I've been doing this 26 years, been through multiple bear markets. And I will tell you that I always get the question during a bear market, even when a client doesn't need the funds, should we liquidate the cash and avoid further losses? And I think that that's the wrong approach. You're allowing emotions to take over. That's my opinion. So that's just a point I wanted to make there, because, what we're talking about here, folks, is true risk tolerance versus emotional tolerance. Risk tolerance, it's based on math, income needs, time horizon. Emotional tolerance based on how you feel during volatility. So back to my previous comment about, should we liquidate during a bear market to mitigate further losses? At the end of the day, it's very important that you understand that if you do a risk tolerance questionnaire, folks, it's not going to tell you what real world behavior is going to be like. It's giving you somewhat of an idea that you can base your emotions off of on how you feel like you might react during a bear market. And I will tell you, Bill, you probably agree with this, that the first bear market that you will, find yourself in during retirement, it's pretty much the real test on how you're going to feel about your investments going forward. If you panic, most likely you're being too aggressive, regardless of what the projections are in your portfolio. And that kind of brings us to sequence of return risk. Basically, what we're talking about here is when you might experience losses or growth during your retirement years or your investment time horizon. And I will tell you, Bill, I don't know, you can feel free to chime in here, but, losses early in retirement are more damaging than losses later. Because if you're in retirement and you're using your portfolio to supplement your income, when you're taking withdrawals during a down market or a bear market, you're locking in losses. So that's what I mean when I say losses early in retirement are more detrimental than losses later in retirement. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, we did a whole entire podcast episode on sequence of return risk, and it was episode 5.
Oh, very nice.
You can go to our website, crownadvisorgroup.com, and under the search tab there, you can look for sequence of return risk, but it is episode 5. And we spent a good amount of time just going through the concept, and there's some resources there as well. And I believe we have a resource we're going to include in our show notes for this as well. It gives you an example of sequence of return risk.
Yeah. And thank you for that. Please take a listen, folks. And there's plenty of other great content on there as well. So let's kind of talk about rebalancing and basically having discipline versus trying to time the market. And it goes back to the comments we've received or questions we've received in the past. Should we liquidate, go to cash? Should we protect ourselves from further pullback in value in the markets when the markets are having a very volatile time, or whether we're in a bear market? And I would tell you that rebalancing, and doing it systematically, removing emotion from it, this is going to help you keep risk in check. And it sets up, a very systematic way of going about managing your portfolio, managing your holdings, managing your risk, versus market timing. It's reactive, it's emotional, and it's usually late. And Bill, I know one of your favorite sayings is, if you're trying to time the market, you have to be right twice. You have to get lucky twice. You got to get lucky on your exit strategy, and you got to get lucky on your re-entrance strategy. And I'll tell you, folks, if that were possible, if people could do that, then we wouldn't be sitting here with you today, talking about this. I'd be somewhere on a private island relaxing if I'm able to time the market. It's just not possible. And the only way that you can do it is to get lucky. And I'm not sure if you want to, I don't know how you feel about it, Bill, but I don't know if you want to, rely on luck to drive how you go about managing your portfolio and your investments.
I mean, you could try it. You can certainly try it. You might not like the results with that. And I know we did a whole podcast episode on this one as well, on market risk and market timing. And I think this is where it comes back to understanding, if you have somebody who's managing your investments, you need to understand what their investment philosophy is. What do they think about when the market decides to get volatile? What is the strategy behind their investment portfolios? Because everyone can chase a shooting star, right? When the markets are doing well, everyone can chase that. What's going to be the strategy when that market turns? And I think that we would both agree that luck is not really a strategy. And you're right, you have to be right both times. But what we talked about in the episode on market risk was, well, okay, so if I'm right the first time and I get out and I miss the big drop, problem is, generally speaking, if you study markets, you'll see that your best days in the market, your best return days on an individual basis in the market, are surrounded by your worst individual days in the market. The days where the market drops the most are usually followed by the days where the market increases the most on an annual basis. That typically is the way that works. So great, we missed the drop. Oh, I missed the increase as well. That's not really the best strategy, because you're right. You have to be right twice to make that work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So kind of wrapping that up with a bow, I mean, at the end of the day, folks, it's way better to have a very disciplined approach, removing emotion, set proper rebalancing schedules, and working with an advisor who you agree with the philosophy around how they're managing the portfolio. And if you do not understand that philosophy, if you don't even know what the philosophy is, if you've never even had this conversation, that would be the first place I would start, quite frankly. And Bill, I know you agree with that. So I want to just tie that with a bow for now. Folks, if you have questions, please reach out. Happy to help in that area. Tax-aware investing, Bill. I know you wanted to kind of talk through that. That was one of the topics we had on our list for today. So I'm going to kick it over to you and let you run with it.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember on all of this is that your investment returns don't matter if your tax problem eats all of your returns, right? And that's what we see a lot. People look at their account balance in their 401k and they think, I have $1 million in here. Well, yes, you and the IRS have $1 million in that account. Some of that is yours and some of that is theirs. And they're going to take their piece when you decide to take your piece from that account. So understanding what we have talked about previously on several episodes about asset location, and we talked about this on our previous episode too, about understanding taxable, tax deferred, and tax free, and understanding those environments and where your money exists and how it's going to be treated by the IRS. Look, the IRS doesn't care if you understand how the 77,000 pages they have in the tax code work. They don't care whether or not you understand that. Just like if you're driving down the road and you run through a stop sign and you get pulled over by a police officer and they write you a ticket for running through the stop sign, the defense you use isn't going to be, well, I didn't know there was a stop sign back there. I didn't see it. That's not going to work. You're going to get a ticket because you're supposed to know all of the traffic laws that apply to you. Same thing here. You're going to pay taxes regardless of whether or not you understand how those taxes are applied to your accounts. So it's important for you to understand how that works. Do you need to be an expert on the IRS tax code? No. But you do need to find someone who can partner with you to help you navigate this, because it is complicated, it is complex, and all of your different account types play together in determining whether you are tax optimized or not. So remember that from an investment standpoint, that's what matters, right? Do you have, growth assets, which are tax-free or tax-deferred accounts? What does that location look like? Do you have income-heavy assets? Are they in tax-advantaged places? Do you have tax-efficient accounts? Your taxable accounts, are they being efficiently managed? Are they being excessively traded to the point where, you're generating unnecessary capital gains on an annual basis? These are all questions you can ask when you sit down with your trusted advisor to say, I need to understand what's going on inside my accounts, or what the tax treatment is going to be on those. And I think it's important to understand that two identical portfolios from a dollar standpoint can have wildly different tax outcomes.
Oh, 100% agree with you there. You could have the exact same portfolio or same investment risk tolerance or strategies being deployed between two different investors, two different clients, and they could have wildly different outcomes over time based on how the tax treatment is being planned for. And this isn't something that just happens, folks. I mean, you have to have a strategy with how you plan for your taxes in your accounts and in your portfolio.
Yeah, and you need to be coordinating your investment strategy with your tax planning, right? To align your rebalancing with tax loss harvesting.
Correct.
Right? There are ways to actually harvest the losses in your account to offset the gains and put you in a favorable tax situation from that standpoint. It's important to remember that we work with CPAs and tax preparers a lot in what we do. Those folks are very good at what they do, but their job is to look backwards and tell you what has happened already. They are historians.
Correct.
Our job is to look forward from an investment standpoint and a strategy that looks forward from a tax standpoint to tell you what we think is going to happen and how we should react to it in the most appropriate fashion. And that helps us remove emotion from our strategy as well. And emotion can be just an absolute return killer in what you're doing. So if you have a strategy on how you're going to do things, if you have a bucketed strategy on where money's going to exist and what its purpose is going forward, it helps remove emotion from this as well.
Yeah, we've talked about emotion quite a bit in today's episode, Bill. And I think that, it's true, though, that emotion probably wrecks portfolios more often than not. And I think it's clear that what we're trying to get across here is we have to remove emotion from the investment process, the investment strategy. It's key. It's key to success from a long-term success scenario. And folks, moving kind of along to kind of wrap up this episode, I'm just going to real quick talk about, income replacement readiness, planning for the next downturn, so to speak. We talked about the bucket strategy, having different buckets of money for different time frames of your life, the now, soon, later. Having those buckets appropriately set up for you to be able to access funds when needed it really does help minimize the impact of a bear market or a pullback in the market on your overall portfolio. I mean, folks, retirement portfolios don't fail in good markets. They fail in bad ones, especially if you don't have yourself properly set up using that now, soon, later, or that bucketed approach. Because if you're forced to liquidate funds to pay everyday bills, or even to pay emergency situations that may pop up that are unexpected, and you're forced to liquidate during a downturn, it can be very detrimental to your long-term strategy. You know, like which assets can you access without damage is really the key question you should be asking yourself, or asking your trusted advisor you're working with now. Hey, if I'm in a pinch, if I run into a jam and I have an emergency, where can I pull assets from regardless of what's happening in the markets? Whether we're in a downturn or in a bull market, where can I pull assets from where it will not be detrimental to me? Whether it be detrimental from a tax perspective or detrimental to a long-term success of your overall financial plan or your overall income plan. This is such a key question you should be asking. And if you have not asked that question, we highly recommend you do that right away. Not all assets are liquid at the same time, or at the right time for that matter. You know, liquidity planning prevents forced selling, and cash flow doesn't equal cash value. Keep that in mind. So what I'm talking about here again is, you know, where do you go to sell off something first in retirement? How do you do it? How do you do it without impacting your taxes in a negative way? How do you do it without impacting your overall income plan in a negative way? So keep that in mind. Bill, anything to add there before we kind of wrap it up?
Just a couple of things here real quick. First of all, our overall goal with this particular episode is not to generate any sort of fear.
Correct.
Or to make you just throw your arms up because this is complicated and I don't know the right questions to ask. And the purpose here is to motivate you to start asking questions, right? Like, for example, are my investments structured in such a way that they're going to be able to support my income in retirement? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, we feel like income planning protects your investments. And ultimately, we feel like tax planning and tax optimization helps to preserve your overall rate of return. And on top of all of that, protection planning from an insurance standpoint or long-term care standpoint helps to prevent the derailment of this entire plan. So hopefully one of your New Year's resolutions going into 2026 is, I've got to start to take control of this because I'm not sure I can answer these questions right now. I need to talk to the person that I trust and work together with them to figure out, am I on pace and are my investments going to be able to do what I want them to do in my retirement years? I think that's kind of our overall arching theme, and hopefully this episode motivates you to do that.
Yep. Love it. Very well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. So with that, we'll kind of leave it there for this part 3 episode, and we'll pick it up again next week and kind of wrap up this, 2026 New Year planning with a bow. Bill, I want to thank you for being on with us today. Folks, if you like today's episode, please hit that subscribe or that like button, forward it to a friend, family member, or a colleague. And if you have questions, maybe questions that aren't being answered by the current professional that you trust, that you work with, please feel free to reach out. You can reach us at 704-469-0200, or you can shoot us an email at info@crownadvisorgroup.com. And as Bill mentioned previously in the episode, feel free to go to our website at crownadvisorgroup.com and hit that button to schedule some time with us if you so choose. We appreciate you being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. See you later, folks.